This is Walt Benetti, publisher of JeffParrishNews.com, and we are recording candidate interviews at the original Italian Pie of Kenner. If you hear any background noise, that's happy people eating great food. So come by and get some, 3600 Williams Boulevard. Joining me now is a candidate for state representative in Old Jefferson, Old Metairie, and Airline Park.
Right.
Trey Mustian. How you doing, Trey?
Good, great, Walt. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know you're an attorney, but tell us what you do and why you care so much that you want to run for state rep.
Okay. Well, I have a general civil practice. I've been practicing in Jefferson Parish for 38 years. I've done a little bit of everything. Probably the majority of my practice is representing injured workers, and that's become a passion of mine. I've spent the last 10 years during the legislative sessions speaking on legislation, both for and against, trying to help the rights of injured workers. And that's what really got me interested in the legislature. I've seen a lot of what's going on up there, good and bad, and I feel like I can contribute to it, making it better.
Now, Baton Rouge is definitely broken. I mean,
Yes.
and there's a lot of gridlock going on. How can you bridge party lines? I mean, you're a Democrat in a pretty Republican area,
Right.
and Jefferson Parish is obviously Republican. But how can you bridge that gap and do what is best for all the people in your district?
Right. Well, first of all, I think that party is not nearly as important on the state and local level as it is in national politics. One thing I've learned from being in Baton Rouge is that it's all about relationships. I see people up there crossing party lines or relationships all the time, and I think that's the single most important thing. My focus is going to be sticking with our Jefferson Parish delegation and trying to do the best that we can for Jefferson Parish. That's job number one. And then, of course, we want to do the best job we can for the state, too. But I think it's just about building relationships with people, and I think that's something I'm good at.
What do you think are the most important issues in your district?
Well, drainage is always a problem, always an important issue, and getting proper funding back to the parish from the state for that is a big priority. I think that's probably the number one issue. I think the fact that we have a lot of young people leaving the parish is a concern. And I hear a lot of the other folks running for office are talking about trying to find some solutions to that, and I'd like to work on that as well.
You think that's because of jobs or because of the housing stock?
I think it's a little bit of both. I've heard more people blame it on the housing stock and house prices, and there's been talk about programs to try to make it easier for first-time homeowners to buy homes in Jefferson Parish, and I would certainly support helping with that.
Any other issues you want to tackle when you're in Baton Rouge?
Oh yeah, there's a bunch. I'm very concerned about car insurance rates. I think the approach that we had towards tackling that has been one that hasn't been effective. The measures that they talked about last year, things they've been trying for many, many years, they've never been able to tie that to actually lowering rates. But there are things that the insurance companies are allowed to do here that we could stop, one of which is using credit history to get your car insurance rates. That's actually pricing a lot of people out of the market. It's contributing to having so many uninsured motorists, which raises everybody's rates. So I think if we could have legislation stop using credit histories, marital status. There's a thing called a widow penalty. When a man dies and leaves his widow, her rates go up. If a guy gets deployed to Afghanistan and comes back and hadn't had insurance for a year, his rates go up just because he hasn't had insurance. There's a lot of things like that we can fix that will actually have a real effect on lowering car insurance rates. You want more?
No, any other big picture issues?
I'm very interested in trying to make our tax code more fair and more workable and more attractive to businesses outside of the state. I think we could actually lower some of the tax rates. We could get rid of a lot of the exemptions. I'm also interested in the Industrial Tax Exemption Program, ITEP. As you know, that program gives property tax exemptions. It was until recently controlled by one state board. I think they've now given a little more control locally. But local parishes are losing, I think, about $2 billion a year in property tax revenues. And it's supposed to be tied to job creation.
Right.
If a company can show that they're actually creating the jobs, that's one thing. But I haven't seen. Doesn't look like there's a lot of accountability to that. So I'd like to build a lot more back into there. The other thing I'm really interested in is the dedicated funds in Louisiana. There's so many dedicated funds that it really hamstrings the legislature. Doesn't give them a lot of leeway in doing different funding priorities. And I would really like to go in and take a good look at that and see what we really need to leave as far as dedicated funds, and which one we can get rid of and loosen up other revenues.
Do you think we need a constitutional convention?
For a limited purpose, yes. I would be in favor of a constitutional convention limited to finance for that very purpose, because it's going to be necessary. I think the ITEP would have to be, if I'm not wrong, would have to be partially addressed through constitutional. I know there's other things that would absolutely have to be a constitutional amendment. So for that limited purpose, I would be, yes.
What kind of feedback are you getting from your constituents? What have they said? Hey, Trey, when you get up there, here's the first thing you need to tackle.
People are real worried about car insurance rates. That's a big issue, and taxes. It's usually money things. Those are the two things that people I find are most concerned about. Some people are concerned about education. I mean, a lot of people are concerned about early childhood education. That's becoming something that people are aware of that we really need to get busy with and work on in Louisiana. We have at least 200,000 kids in this state who really don't have access to that. It makes such a big difference in their outcomes in their lives. But I would say the taxes and the car insurance are the two biggest things I hear about.
How long have you lived in Jefferson Parish and the district?
I've lived in the New Orleans area for 41 years. I lived in Laplace for a number of years. I've lived in Jefferson Parish for 20 years, and in the district about 18. So.
What do you think the main differences are between you and your opponent, who is the brother of the outgoing term-limited state representative?
Well, Mr. Henry, I've met him several times. He seems like a nice guy, but he's I hate to call him a career politician, but in a way he is. He's been in politics his entire adult life, mostly working for Representative Scalise in different capacities. And now he's moving into another area of politics. I'm running for one term, and I've made that very clear, and I'm really trying to set an example with that. I would like to see more people term limit themselves. I think that's the way our founding fathers intended for government to be. So I think that's a big difference between me and Mr. Henry. He's attempted to make a big deal out of the fact that I'm a Democrat and he's a Republican. And if that's the only important thing, there's no point to even have the election. We'll just have people vote by letters, and that'll be all of it. But we've been at some forums together, and I just feel like I have some more specific, concrete ideas about things that need to be done than I've heard from him so far.
Let's talk about the one-term idea, because everyone that I've talked to, because I'm an advocate for term limits, and I'm totally against representatives that job hop to state senate and back and forth, and similarly on the council from district to at-large. I believe the at-large position should be completely eliminated. But they say proponents of non-term limits talk about the fact that there's a learning curve when you get to Baton Rouge. That you have to learn how the sausage made. You have to learn how a bill gets to a committee and gets passed. And obviously you talked about relationships. It's going to take time to develop those relationships. You think you'll have enough time in 4 years?
Oh, sure. I think that's something that actually happens pretty quickly. The relationship part, I think if you've been there in a session, that happens. I already know a lot of people up there anyway. But I see both sides of that argument. I really am doing this in a way of trying to make a point. That's not why I'm running, but I mean, the one-term thing is trying to make the point that about term limits. There's both sides of it, but the problem is when you're a career politician is you're voting based upon your political future. You're not always voting on what is the
and who you can get a campaign contribution.
That's right, and I don't want to have to be concerned about that, frankly. I don't want to be up there tied to giving people favors so I can hope to get reelected in 4 years. So I really feel like with the one-term pledge that I can have a level of independence, that I can go up there and do the best job I can and be very sincere about it, and then come back with a good conscience.
And as you said, tackling auto insurance, obviously that's going to take a little bit of time. The insurance lobby is massive.
Yes.
And we have, in my opinion, an incompetent insurance commissioner. Hopefully that's going to change in October. At least I hope so. What specifically do you think? You think tort reform is the answer? I know you're an attorney, but you're not a personal injury attorney.
Well, I do a little personal injury, mostly workers' comp, but look, I've been around for 38 years, and I've seen this tort reform stuff. It gets rehashed almost every year. The lowering the jury trial and all that stuff. The problem is that they've never actually proven that any of that stuff reduces rates. It helps insurance companies win cases sometimes. One thing they could do that would really reduce lawsuits in this state is raise the prescriptive period from 1 year to at least 2 years. We're the only state in the country, as far as I know, where you only have 1 year to sue. So logically, you're going to have a lot more lawsuits because people have less time to get their claims settled. So, I mean, if I ever saw tort reform that was tied, that was actually could show me that it was going to actually reduce rates, I'd be happy to look at that. But the things I talked about earlier absolutely would reduce rates, especially the taking away the using credit history, and it would allow more people to actually afford insurance. That we have a massive number of uninsured drivers in this state right now. That's a big thing that's driving our very high rates. That and bad roads and things like that. So,
can you do anything as a state rep as far as inviting and getting more competition from insurance companies, getting more insurance companies involved in Louisiana? I mean, Nationwide, one of the largest insurers in the country, won't write auto insurance policies in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah. Well, that's, a lot of that's just market driven. I mean, I know there's a lot of insurance companies doing quite well here as well, and some of them just gave back some, or just had some, just reduced rates recently. I know State Farm did, and I think some others are talking about it. So
I think that's just to prop up the insurance commissioner. I think in January they'll be raising them back.
Well, they were saying during the legislative session they were talking about, and how bad things were, and now they're reducing rates. So it's hard to know what to believe, But I don't know. I don't know what we can specifically do to make more insurance companies want to come here. I think the insurance industry is pretty healthy, to be honest with you.
Okay. Tell people we have 9 days to go before early voting begins.
Right.
Tell people how they can get involved in your campaign, find out more about you and the issues that you propose, and how they can find you.
Okay. Well, there's a bunch of ways. I have a campaign website, which is treyinthehouse.com. And I also have a Facebook page with the same name, Trey in the House. Or they can call me on my cell phone at 504-231-4697. I'm putting it on my postcards. Anybody can get a hold of me anytime they want to. And if I do get elected, I'm planning on holding at least 6 town halls a year and setting up an email alert system so I can keep my constituents aware of what's going on. So I want to be accessible. Well,
that's good. We need transparency in Baton Rouge, and we need people that are going to be able to explain the issues to the constituents and get their feedback as well. So holding town halls is a brilliant idea and long overdue.
People aren't really doing it anymore, and I think it needs to be done.
Okay, so TreyInTheHouse.com. I like that. That's catchy. Trey Mustian running for state representative for Old Jefferson, Old Metairie, and Airline Park. And get out there and vote. Check out his campaign website. Again, TreyInTheHouse.com. Thank you, Trey.
Thank you, Walt.